Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Geek Speak with Envision IT, a podcast for business leaders and technology experts that like to stay on top of the latest security news and listen to interviews with insightful industry leaders. I'm Bill Crane, Chief Stakeholder Architect and CTO at Envision IT. Today, Nancy Pouch, Chief Evangelist of Stakeholder Value and President of Envision IT, is joining me to co-host an exciting episode of Geek Speak. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to introduce Forrest Fuller. He's a firm IT specialist at Neider and Boucher. Neider and Boucher was well ahead of the times with the remote work, and we thought it'd be nice to talk to Forrest and get his perspective on how their firm is handling, the current situation we're in, and maybe some of the lessons learned. So, welcome, Forrest.
Hello. Good morning. I'd just like to add on. I'm employed by Neider Boucher. We're a law firm in Madison, Wisconsin, and we are assisting individuals and businesses with their business service needs and estate planning needs. So both representing individuals and businesses.
Yeah, critical work at this time. I mean, goodness gracious, you guys do important work and probably not slowing down much with the current situation with COVID-19.
Yeah, we have a team of attorneys who are working what seems like around the clock to stay on top of all the resources that are coming out in terms of grants for organizations and the employment laws, and helping guide some of the decisions, some of them difficult decisions that businesses are making. So,
yeah, it's really interesting times, and things are changing pretty rapidly. So it's good to have folks like you helping out. So you guys enabled remote work a while ago, and at the time, this coronavirus wasn't even thought of, I would imagine. So I guess maybe you can give us a little background on when you enabled that remote work and maybe some of what your original objectives were.
Yeah, it was in late 2018 and early 2019. We were having a lot of discussions on how to best enable our employees to get their work done and serve our clients. And when we did that, we actually ran an employee survey asking people specifically what are some of their technology needs, and asking them for input on that. And from that, one of the top findings we had was people really wanted the ability to work remotely and to work to do it successfully and securely. And we have some employees that work out of state. And a lot of I think just the modern day workforce looks for flexibility with work. Attorneys work a lot of long hours. And from the firm perspective, we wanted something stable and reliable that, again, was secure, protected our client data, and had fast speeds. So after we determined that need, we started looking to implement that, and we had it in place by third quarter of 2019. So the timing of that was really essential for us, given current day events. So.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I don't know if you could have planned it much better, considering the current situation. I would wonder, how has that benefited your stakeholders in the midst of all this?
A couple of ways, and some of them maybe not so obvious, were when we made that decision to look at enabling everyone to work remotely, we had a lot of discussions about who should have remote access, what applications should people be using. Is it all the applications, only some applications? And we were doing a complete audit, so we were looking at, are people accessing remotely with firm-issued devices, or are they using bring your own device? And also questions about security and how, and some of those. So it kind of led itself naturally to a lot of the business continuity questions that a lot of people are asking themselves, a lot of the questions people are asking right now in response to this unexpected pandemic we have going on. So one of the big benefits was we had a lot of those discussions before now, and it led us to kind of discussing those and doing it in a planned fashion rather than a responsive method. So once we did that, we met with Envision and were able to kind of see what solutions there were out there to meet what our goals, meet some of the goals and objectives we had identified. And that's really helped. So given what's going on now, we were pretty well set up once we implemented our project and completed that last year. Today people didn't really skip a beat. They're working from home versus work. There's some changes, of course, that we'll probably discuss later, but it really allowed us to not miss a day of work. People could work from home almost immediately. So.
Right, for sure.
I was just going to mention one thing that I just think is so admirable that I think is worth highlighting. And that is, Forrest, you and the team at Neider and Boucher were really having it sounds like a really open and healthy dialogue with all of your stakeholders and primarily your attorneys, kind of, the users that you serve, right? And through that dialogue, I think it's so interesting that, they were expressed what would be nice for them or some, ways to work that would serve not only the firm and the clients, but really themselves too. And you guys listened and proactively, we're putting all that in place for them. And look at that. Look at how things kind of turn out, right? I think that's just so awesome. Here you guys were proactively listening, asking and listening, right? And then acting upon it, right? Not just saying, thanks, great feedback, but really taking action on that. And I just think it's funny how now, interesting in such a great way, how that is serving you guys and your business and your clients in such a great way. But it came from a source of open dialogue, listening, and then acting upon it, right? Not just lip service.
Yeah. And to that effect, we're really seeing the dividends of that effort and commitment and investment now. So
yeah. Well, and to your point earlier, as far as the engagement, right? The employees. I was talking actually with one of your attorneys last week, and he was saying, I'm so proud of our IT team. Look at how prepared we were, and I can work, from anywhere now. I can still be safe, right? And gosh, and you guys, just so you know, if your ears were ringing, I'll tell you, I heard it firsthand. So anyway, sorry about that, Bill. I just think that's so important to emphasize.
Oh, no problem. And I think, we're often talking about work from home these days, but really it's more than that for the attorneys. I think, it's not just from home, but they can work from anywhere. Have there been any other unexpected benefits that you guys have seen?
Something when we started the project of moving a lot of our applications to remote access and people working remotely, once we started to add in some of the critical business applications, we found how useful and easy it was to test those applications and then add additional applications. So I think an unexpected benefit of that was, okay, we had our really critical business applications all set up for remote. We didn't necessarily have all of them, but now that everyone's working from home, it's pretty easy to add in additional software after that. So I guess if you're looking at going to remote work, you don't have to do it all at once, but getting a start on it can help you later because you can add in more applications later, but get some of the critical pieces done up front.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And the platform that you guys ended up with was Citrix, virtual apps and desktops. And one of the things that you mentioned is the ability to kind of slowly roll that out. And I think you mentioned too, originally you guys were wondering, do we need 100% of our apps inside of that environment or, just some of them? But either way, I think I heard you say earlier too, that you had the ability to quickly add applications, maybe if they're missing, and you didn't have to go around to, every laptop or workstation to do that. Is that right?
Yeah. And a lot of applications as well, they didn't have many problems right off the bat, but we were able to work with Envision to resolve any issues that applications did have. So that was very helpful. And then now it's just a matter of if we want to add something, we can do that separate from our production environment, test it out, and then choose when we want to push it out to production for everyone. So.
Yeah, that's a lot of great flexibility.
Yeah, and the other part, I guess, was an unexpected benefit for today, or for today's time, was how easily I was able to, we needed some additional devices for some people who normally we didn't have working remotely, but we needed to now. So the amount of work to go in to roll out and prepare new devices or laptops for people was a lot easier because we were really just adding the Citrix piece to it. But all the applications were there, and their desktop looked just as it would when they got home as it would in the office.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Well, and stereotypically, and I want to say that very strongly, stereotypically, attorneys can have pretty high demands, right? Or they're tough graders. Let's put it that way, because they're usually pretty driven and have high attention to detail for their work, right? And it's interesting because I know, Forrest, you and your team are really about have really, like I said, with that dialogue, trying to give them, everything that they're asking for. And I know Neider and Boucher attorneys are really great folks. So yet again, just in that field, they tend to have high expectations. So what's the feedback from them as far as you had mentioned you want to make it look, just like they have in the office when they're remote? How has their feedback been on the experience, the user experience for them?
Yeah, it's been a really good experience. Many attorneys I haven't heard anything from, which tells me they're able to work just as they did at the office, which, no news is good news sometimes.
That certainly speaks to their productivity, right?
I've gotten a lot of good feedback in terms of, how happy they are we did this and how they're able to continue working. And one of the things that really helped us is, instead of right now when so many people are trying to figure out how they're going to work, how they're working differently, some of the questions we would have had about how internally are we working, how are we making people work remotely, our focus can be on how are we helping our clients, what are our clients' needs. It's not focused on what's our business needs in terms of, at least a technology standpoint. We can really focus our efforts on getting some of those updates to clients on employment laws and some of those other things I mentioned at the beginning. So,
yeah, that's really important. So I guess as other people, listen to this and they think about how their users are, potentially working remotely or how they can do it better. As you guys ventured into this, and then now the last couple of weeks, what were some of the things that you've learned that maybe you could share and kind of give others insight into?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that, enabling people to work remotely doesn't necessarily mean that everybody was working remotely. So I think looking back, and you ask your staff and employees to try things at home, but I think a focus you could be on is, what are people's home office? What are their home offices like? Are they prepared if they need to work? In circumstances, a lot of the time people are working a couple of hours from home, but they're not home for weeks or months.
Right.
Work 8 to 5 or more. So I think looking at some of those needs, what are you going to do if something like this happens? Can people take home some of the computer equipment? Is that an investment you want to make up front in people's home offices or later? How do you kind of address that? So that's something I've noticed. Some of those questions have come up with this current pandemic.
Can I just jump in real quick with that, Forrest? I'll just mention to folks, and I know you've got more to say there, but I'll mention to folks on our April 9th coffee break webinar, we're having Thea Polancic from ClearSpace, and she actually expands beyond the technology discussion. And you just mentioned that, so I'll just mention that real quick. So I'd invite people to join, because touching on that point, again, kind of beyond the technology, she talks about certainly work habits, and then infrastructure beyond the technology, but like you just said, the office space, right? What's your environment like? And then integrity, and kind of how those three things, and integrity around accountability and stuff like, both for personal, professional, because now it's all melded together unavoidably, right? And so I would encourage folks, if that's interesting too, to expand upon just that one point, but expand upon it, to join our April 9th coffee break webinar. In the second half is when we'll have Thea come in. But please continue on, with that, if you could, Forrest.
Yeah, I think the other piece, when you're looking at the business continuity piece, just above and beyond enabling remote work. It's the other pieces that you're seeing a lot of. You're probably dealing with on your own, and you're also seeing it on TV. Is what do you do for audio conferences, video conferences? How about phone calls, mobile phones? Are there apps that you could explore using to help keep privacy for your employees if they're making calls or receiving calls? Some of those things that maybe you don't normally look at when someone's working remotely because you're not doing it all the time, but those are things to keep in mind. And I think a lot of people are already addressing those now probably, but that was kind of a blind spot when you look at the remote work individually versus business continuity. That's something that you have to consider as well.
There's a little bit of difference between, conveniently working remote, once in a while versus, you're remote all the time working from home. So to your point, you might be missing some of those things like, printers or scanners or, things that kind of is your daily workflow. Well, great. Is there anything else, Forrest, you wanted to talk about today?
I don't think so. I think just as Nancy touched upon too, was engagement, open discussion, sometimes putting things into place before it's a necessity, but always evaluating your environment and your software and how you're enabling your employees and dig into it, because a time like this, I tell you what, it's really paid off for our organization and for our clients. So.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Forrest. It's been such a pleasure working with you and Neider Boucher. It's a great partnership, and it's very kind of you to share your experiences so far.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Forrest. Paying it forward. Hope everybody, I know everybody will take away some good lessons from this. Thank you. Excellent. So now we're going to welcome Rosie Ward to the podcast. We're so excited to have Rosie. We've met Rosie through the Conscious Capitalism community. We both serve the chapter in Minneapolis, as well as the greater community globally. Rosie Ward is a fierce advocate for humanity who is sought after to help rehumanize workplaces that free, fuel, and inspire people to bring their best selves to work and to home each day. Rosie serves as the CEO of Salveo Partners, a professional consulting and training company focused on equipping organizations to find success while putting people back at the forefront of their business, something near and dear to Envision's heart. Also, though, we are so excited because Rosie is also the author of the soon-to-be bestseller, Rehumanizing the Workplace, which launches on March 24th, 2020. And we've got an advanced copy of the book and are so ecstatic because Rosie's work is so important to corporate America. Check that. Corporations globally, to have so much of her expertise and experience documented in this book that really needs to be a handbook to every organization that has the privilege of serving employees and people. We're excited that it's out there and accessible to people. So with that, Rosie, welcome to the Geek Speak podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So Rosie, you know Envision, right? And you know Envisioners. We're pretty good at technically enabling organizations and people to work remotely. But where we're so excited to work with you is on that cultural aspect, right? You really bring so much expertise to helping people, as the book says, rehumanize the workplace, right? And right now in these current times, with all the concern around COVID-19 and the shift really to so much of the country to remote work, that already creates, physical separation. And, can you help us understand, really what to be extra conscious of so we can maintain, our human connection, even while we're all working remotely? Because I think some of us, even unconsciously, be it in our language, in our mannerisms, in just, so many things that maybe we're just going through the motions and not being as mindful as we need to,
how can we be extra vigilant to be sensitive and maintain or even build better human connection while we're all, together in this and working remotely?
Yeah, that's the $1 million questions during these times, right? And I think it is an important one because right now, anxieties are at an all-time high, and people, what they don't know what's going to happen with their employment or their finances or their family or their coworkers or their neighbors. And so I think first and foremost, we have to recognize that our nation and our world is struggling, and we've got to honor that. And I think that people who are task focused, that want to just jump into an agenda and get things done, is not going to be productive. And we have to really honor a space for people to just say, hey, I'm struggling today, or hey, can I help in here? And so one of the things that you mentioned, language, that is a starting point of just even how are you referring to the situation and what's the language you're using. So like social distancing, I know is the term that the CDC is using. And I've heard in the last week some amazing social solidarity, social respect, like even thinking about it differently so it doesn't feel so isolating. I even heard someone today literally say that they're, instead of shelter in place, they're calling it safe at home. And just really being mindful of, is there language we can use that makes it feel less scary, that feels more inclusive, more connected? Because in many ways, people, when they freak out, they isolate even more. And then when you're talking about workers, and I get it, and again, this is common language, but to say like non-essential, and people say, well, then they feel disposable. And then their anxiety goes even higher because like, well, if I'm not essential, then what happens when we rebound? Am I not needed anymore? And so it should be a thing like people like not directly involved in the response, or people not directly involved in fill in the blank. Like there's a way we can use language that doesn't make someone feel less than or not essential, because people are already struggling. So I just think being really mindful of how we're positioning things and how we're saying things. Words matter, and I feel like they matter now even more than ever. And then with that, it's really, how are you using technology to connect? Obviously, platforms that have video conferencing capabilities are way better than phone, and and this is where you all thrive and connect with people as human beings. I've heard teams say, you know what, we're taking a couple times a week to just have a 10 or 15 minute check-in, and we're not talking about work at all. How are you doing? Teams that are sending, reply all emails, like here's my office worker today, and it's their kid or their pet or whatnot. I mean, trying to bring some humor and some levity and some humanity, because we're all in this together. So I think it's little things that we almost take for granted when we're physically together, because we can be heads down working, that we have to almost create more intentionality around now that we're remote. And I think it's actually going to strengthen teams and strengthen communities if done well.
Yeah. It's funny, Bill and I are chuckling right now because we had one earlier today that one of our interns is trying to quickly, in short order, build a home gym because all the gyms are closed, right? All the workout facilities. And he was asking anyone if they had some, equipment they wanted to sell or not sell. And Envision founder, Bo Smithback, who you write about in the book, Rehumanizing the Workplace, he shot back with, he's got two, they're toddler now, two twins, right? And hey, if he wants to loan them for the gym, they're great. They want to be held at the same time and great workout. And, all of us got a good giggle. So just what you said right now, I have a little bit this morning, so we're trying really hard with that. So it's nice to know we got to keep on keeping on with that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Speaking of your book, in there you mentioned the 5 key principles for humanizing the workforce. How do those apply to what we're experiencing now?
Yeah, I think that the 5 rehumanizing principles apply now more than ever. And so we talk about that they're not just for workplaces. Honestly, they're for families, they're for communities, they're for teams. They kind of become almost universally applicable. And who knew they'd be even more relevant with all that's happening today? And so really just briefly, the first rehumanizing principle, we call it build a lighthouse. And kind of like a lighthouse can help cut through the fog when there's stormy waters. Lord knows we are in the stormiest of waters we've ever been in our history right now. And when organizations have already done the work to have clarity of purpose and they've operationalized their values and they can re-anchor in that and say, yes, how we're going about work is changing right now, but this is how it's reminding people of that purpose and those values, just helps provide this groundedness and this anchoring for people when they're swirling. And if an organization hasn't done that work, you know what? we find out what we're made of, either collectively as an organization made of people or individually when times are at their toughest, and really how do we rise? How do we contribute? And so I think it's an opportunity to really start to look for those moments and opportunities that tell you, who are we? When we are at our best, what is our why? What is our purpose? How are we showing up? And organizations can do that work to really pay attention to that now if they haven't already done why work, anchor in it. And individuals, if they don't know that work themselves, start to do that, because it really does. Like, I will tell you numerous times a day, I anchor myself in my own purpose and core values and go, how do I want to show up today? And it guides me. And so I just think that build a lighthouse is just that calm in the storm that we need to be able to find probably multiple times a day. And so that's the first rehumanizing principle. And then right behind it is, we call it create fearless environments. So yes, we need physical safety right now, which is where the, safe at home and the social solidarity and all of those things are important. And we forget about psychological safety. Again, anxiety is at an all-time high right now. And what we need is people to be able to speak up and say, I'm scared. You know what? I'm struggling. I'm worried. All of those types of things. Hey, I have a really good idea, because you know what? Now is not a time when we need people to be holding back, because we need all kinds of crazy ideas, right? To figure out a new way of doing things. And so really psychological safety resides at that local team level. And in a virtual environment, how are you creating a safe space to invite people to contribute their ideas, to be human and say they're struggling today, to say they need help, to ask for help, et cetera. So those fearless environments become even more important when fear around us is so great. So that's rehumanizing principle number 2. And it's easier to do that if you kind of have clarity of purpose to anchor in, but not a deal breaker. And then rehumanizing principle number 3, we call it wait in the messy middle. And this is really like, if we are ever in a messy middle, oh my goodness, it's right now. And unfortunately, there isn't a fast forward button, right? And so we have
if you find one, get it to the scene, right?
Oh my God, if I can find one, I would use it. Trust me. Like, I am the queen of I want stuff to be done and check off a list. And so, but we have got to go through. And the thing is that times like this force us, yes, we have to sit in some anxiety, but it forces us to really look at what matters to us. It forces us to look at the narratives we tell ourselves, and we can get sucked down a rabbit hole of doom and gloom, or we can really look at what's the story I'm telling myself right now, and how can I make a difference? And so wait in the messy middle is all about us doing that inner self-awareness, inner work to strengthen who we are as a human being, and to show up differently and to show up better. And we need that right now. And everybody has an opportunity to really look inward right now and look at how they're showing up. And then rehumanizing principle number 4 is show up as a leader. So we firmly believe that leadership is a behavior, not a title or a role, and that we all have opportunities to choose to show up as leaders in our lives, in our family, in our community, right? And so we need everybody to really look at what that means. And we define leadership as maximizing our positive impact on the world by becoming our best, fully authentic selves, and then really creating a space for others to break past barriers and step into their greatness. And if there was ever a time to do that, it's now, right? Like, can we be a helpful leader or make a positive difference in our community, right? Can we go to a neighbor and go run errands for them? Can we stay away from people who we know are high risk? Can we support one another and really honor what we're going through and be in this in a solidarity type way? And so showing up as a leader is, guess what? At my workplace, my area is a little bit slow. And so I'm going to offer where I can help in here. Or, what? Maybe, normally I'm really busy, but right now I'm going to take an opportunity to come up with some creative stuff. I mean, there's so many ways that people right now across the board, and especially when we're remote, we can't wait for someone to tell us what to do, or someone more qualified to step up. We're all in uncharted waters. We need everybody to step up. And then the final rehumanizing principle is find your tribe. And that's not find people who are like you and cling to them tightly because it's familiar. This is about building community. And so I was talking to Nancy before this, right? Saying, like, even with some of my friends, we're scheduling community, Zoom-based happy hours and stuff. And we're probably going to connect more now than we have in months because our lives are so busy. And so I think personally and professionally, how can we really create and nurture community and have those times to check in with each other as people and to get to know other people and to rally around one another? And if there was ever a time where we needed to build that tribe and have community, it's now. And so I think those really are principles that we can use at work and outside of work in this period, but especially in this new environment of uncertainty and unforeseen virtuality, if you will, for a while, that can really help bring some of that humanity back and calm amongst these hectic storms.
Yeah. thank you for summarizing those five rehumanizing principles, because they are so important. And now more than ever, I mean, they're always going to be important, but I think right now people really could benefit from understanding them and living them with more fervor than ever. So, hey, Thank you. Any closing thoughts, Rosie, that you want to make sure that we walk away with as we continue in these uncharted waters, hopefully with, our lighthouse in full view, right? As a guidepost, certainly our fearless cultures, fearless workspaces, right? Along with our tribe, right? And hopefully bringing some more into our tribe. And I missed two, and I apologize, but what were the other two? I've got
fearless environment, wade in the messy middle.
That's it.
Yep.
And then one more, wade in the
because you want to fast forward. Show up as a leader.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, is that we have to realize too that we are all human beings and that we're working with human beings. And when we are dealing with incredible adaptive challenges, which we are, this means we've never been here before. Everyone's kind of doing the best that they can. But you know what? We've got to give ourselves permission to ourselves feel scared at times, to feel anxious, to mess up, to, circle back and clean up messes, because we're going to. And so I think if we think that we're going to be able to do this well, and we're not, but there's going to be a lot of lessons learned. And I think when we get through the other side, we're going to be stronger. And so I think we have to remember that we've got to call on our own resourcefulness and during these times as well, and just give ourselves permission to have those human moments where, and then have that resourcefulness to then pick back up and figure out what's the next step, because you wouldn't be human if you didn't have some of that. And so I just think we have to give ourselves permission to be scared and resourceful at the exact same time.
Yeah. Dig deep, right? And show up for yourself and for others. Be compassionate for others as well as yourself. And then God bless, be resilient, right?
For sure.
Trying. So great.
All right. Well, thank you, Rosie. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
Thanks, you too.
All right.
Thanks to all of you for joining today. If you have questions or any future topics you'd like us to cover, please be sure to connect with us via the link in the show notes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe for free on whatever platform you listen to your podcast. We'll see you next time on Geek Speak with Envision IT.